Hello everyone, and welcome to my GMB24 Update official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Sir Keir Starmer has stated that Britons will not have to reduce their consumption of kebabs in order to assist the UK in meeting its emissions-cutting goals. The Prime Minister was questioned about a report from the government's climate change consultants that said eating more vegetarian meals and reducing meat consumption would help reduce emissions. In order to accomplish the UK's goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050, the Climate Change Committee released its official recommendations to the government during his 36-hour round-trip travel to meet with US President Donald Trump. Starmer was questioned by media about the possibility of a kebab ban to reach net zero aims. He responded, "I'm not in the business of telling people how they should run their lives," when asked if he agreed that individuals would need to give up 2 kebabs worth of meat per week in order to help reach the net zero goal. "Because it is so crucial for the next generation and future generations, I am adamant that we will achieve clean power and maintain our commitment to net zero." The Energy Saving Trust claims that the environmental impact of producing animal-based foods is typically higher than that of producing plant-based foods. This is because a large portion of the carbon footprint of the majority of foods is caused by changes in land use and farming practices. Compared to plant-based diets, animal-based foods often score significantly higher in these 2 categories. According to the Trust, cattle emit a lot of methane, a particularly dangerous greenhouse gas, and grazing animals need a lot of land, which is frequently created through deforestation. According to the most recent polling, if an election were to be conducted tomorrow, Reform UK would gain the most seats, but Parliament would be split between 3 parties. Reputable pollsters, according to Electoral Calculus, Nigel Farage's party would receive 25.8% of the vote, giving Reform 192 seats, an increase of 187. That does not imply dictating to others how they should spend their lives. That's not the proper approach to take. Sir Keir Starmer made it plain that Britons will not have to give up their favourite kebabs in order to help the UK meet its ambitious emissions-cutting ambitions in a daring remark that reassured meat lovers across the government's Climate Change Committee report, which said that cutting back on meat consumption would be a critical step in achieving the UK's goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050, sparked a rising debate that the Labour leader was reacting to. The paper, which was released earlier this year, made the case that since livestock farming is one of the main sources of greenhouse gas emissions, a national decrease in meat consumption, especially red meat, would greatly lower the carbon footprint related to food production. The CCC's proposal has generated intense discussion over the future of the UK food industry, as land use change, methane emissions, and deforestation are major factors in the environmental impact of meat production. Reporters asked Sir Keir Starmer if he would back up a kebab ban or other similar measures as part of the push to reach net zero emissions during a high-profile trip to the US to meet with President Donald Trump. After the CCC's suggestions, the subject has received a lot of attention, with some environmentalists calling on the government to act more forcefully. "I'm not in the business of telling people how they should run their lives," Starmer quickly retorted when a journalist pressed him about the report's advice that people might need to give up the equivalent of 2 kebabs worth of meat each week. "My stance is clear: rather than dictating what people may and cannot eat, we will accelerate the transition to sustainable energy in order to reach our emissions targets." Starmer stressed that although the UK's path to net zero would include daring measures in a number of areas, he thought people should be allowed to make their own decisions. That does not imply dictating to others how they should spend their lives. That's not the proper approach to take. Instead than limiting what people consume, the emphasis should be on securing clean electricity and energy solutions, he continued. Starmer's remarks are in line with a rising number of politicians who believe that rather than forcing people to modify their lifestyles, technological advancement and a move toward cleaner energy sources are the keys to achieving net zero emissions. The Labour leader sees economic prospects that don't require compromising people's food preferences, thanks to developments in electric vehicles, renewable energy, and more sustainable farming methods. In order to counterbalance emissions from businesses that are more difficult to decarbonize, Starmer emphasized in his address to U.S. business executives the need for greater investment in green technology, such as carbon capture and storage, CCS, plant-based food substitutes, and sustainable agricultural practices. The future of energy is green, and we can make the transition to a cleaner world without sacrificing the things that make life enjoyable, he stated. But it will take a collective effort, and the government's role is to create an environment where innovation can flourish. Even with Starmer's guarantees, the discussion about food emissions is still developing. The Energy Saving Trust claims that foods derived from animals use a lot more resources than plant-based substitutes and are a major source of carbon emissions in the UK. To supply the rising demand for meat products, grazing animals like sheep and cows need large areas of land, which are frequently destroyed through deforestation. Furthermore, methane, a powerful greenhouse gas with a far greater short-term potential for global warming than carbon dioxide, is produced in vast quantities by animals. According to the Trust's research, switching to plant-based diets, with a particular emphasis on seasonal, local products, may significantly lower the UK's carbon footprint. The two biggest factors influencing the environmental impact of meat production are land use change and methane emissions, a representative for the Energy Saving Trust stated. A reduction in meat consumption could be one of the simplest and most effective ways to lower carbon emissions, especially in developed countries like the UK. But as Starmer pointed out, dietary modifications for environmental reasons are a controversial topic. Any attempt to restrict their food choices would probably be seen by many Britons as an intrusion on their personal freedoms, especially those who have strong cultural attachments to meat-based cuisine like kebabs. With different sides putting forth opposing views, the dispute has fueled a larger political discussion regarding the UK's environmental future. Finding a balance between personal freedom and environmental responsibility will continue to be crucial as the UK moves closer to net zero emissions. Although Starmer has stated unequivocally that the government would not control individual eating habits, it is still unclear how to promote sustainable behaviors without offending sizable segments of the populace. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, so please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and don't miss any updates.